Hi everyone! For the discussion of Module 5, we have been asked to create a sort of makerspace response to the readings of this week. My name is Ashley Medin, and this is my attempt to do that. I do want to give a full disclosure by saying that I do have a script on the left side of my screen here, which is why you will likely see me scrolling with my eyes. As you can see, my collage is titled Alternative Composing Strategies, which should not be a shocker since the readings that we did this week introduced us to three different ways to write that are not just words to a piece of paper or words to a screen. On my left here, I have three words. Those three words are reflection, agency, and representation. I choose these words because I think that they capture the values that alternative composing forms offer. When students create podcasts, videos, visual essays, or multimodal pieces like the ones we've been asked to do today, they're reflecting on their thinking in new ways, taking agency over how they communicate, and representing their identities and ideas in ways that feel meaningful to them. This brings us to the ways that have been introduced to us that push us to think past traditional academic writing, the first of which being scrap writing. In sum, scrap writing is essentially a project where a scrap piece of paper that has been written on and found somewhere is posted to an online forum where people can respond to. These people will creatively think about or add to the message of that piece of paper. I have a quote here from a pilot of scrap writing, who is Jody Shipka, who states that scrap writing is to begin finding ways of giving voice, life, and new potentials for meaning to these strangers and their largely silent life materials. I choose this because it perfectly captures the heart of scrap writing. Instead of one author controlling the text, a whole community contributes, which pushes us to think about authorship, voice, and interpretation in non traditional ways. Moving forward, we have this idea of makerspace created by Soyen Lee. This concept centers around the idea that writing is so much more than just writing. Lee specifically addresses students of culturally and racially diverse backgrounds and emphasizes this perception of agency. She states, the perception of agency, not just whether a person is able to read and write in terms of measurable skills, but whether she or he perceives agency and feels able to read and write in a given context, is crucial in how people respond to such situation. Essentially, this perception of agency, or their belief that they can read and write, is just as important as the idea of their measurable literacy skills. I include this quote because it shows how alternative composing can empower students who may not see themselves represented or validated in traditional academic spaces. Maker spaces encourage experimentation, identity exploration, and creativity, all of which help students feel more capable and more connected to academia. This is something that brushes close to me, as I was once a student who felt like I did not belong. You will see this in the collage that I created. Speaking of which, collage, in other words, fragmentation. Fragmentation, as defined by Garcia Lasso, and the way that resonates best with me, is that the power of collage lies in its oppositional and reconstructive force for envisioning multiplicity and alternative forms of identity within a particular dominant culture. In other words, by combining different pieces, voices, or perspectives, whether in writing, art, or pedagogy, you can challenge dominant norms and create space for alternative identities and ideas. However, the quote that I have in my collage here is different. The quote here says, collage embraces creativity and difference, and as such, its pedagogical applicability has the potential of providing a critical framework for exploring multiple and coexistent realities and identities, as well as revealing their connections with wider society. This shows that collage isn't just about being creative, it can also help people think about how different identities and ideas connect with the world around them. So with all of that being said, and all of these different types of alternate composing strategies, what can be gained from them? I will say this in a short list and then give my reasoning. Like the three words, we have reflection. Students will be able to think about their ideas in new ways, noticing connections or perspectives that they might miss in traditional writing. Agency. Students will have more control over how they communicate, choosing formats and approaches that feel meaningful to them. Representation. Students can express their identities, experiences, and ideas in ways that feel authentic. And lastly, creativity. This encourages experimentation with form, media, and voice, which can spark new ways of thinking. These strategies let students engage with writing beyond just words on a page. They can explore themselves and their ideas in richer, more personal ways while also practicing thinking critically about culture, identity, and society. And while I do think that alternate composing strategies have its pluses, there might also be its negatives as well, or challenges. Some challenges I think that alternate composing strategies will pose is student discomfort, resources, balancing creativity, and learning goals. As far as student discomfort goes, I think that some students may feel nervous about experimenting with new media, voices, or forms, especially if they're used to traditional essays. I am one of those students, and as you can probably tell, have struggled to speak throughout this entire video. Sometimes I feel like I need to add, and I definitely don't. Resources. Alternative projects like podcasts, videos, or visual essays can require extra time, technology, or guidance that not all students have. That's my dog. I apologize. If I was an undergrad, I would say that resources would be one of the troubling things of alternate composing strategies. Balancing creativity and learning goals. Ensuring the project still meets academic objectives while giving students freedom can be tricky. How do you determine that something meets the requirements of critically engaging with a subject or topic or reading, while also determining that it is creatively enough? In all, while these sorts of alternative writing strategies come with challenges and what one would consider difficulties, they are all ways for students to reflect, take agency, and represent themselves. This allows students to make more engaging and meaningful connections to their writing. I hope that you enjoyed this mini presentation and take a look at my personal collage as my representation as a first gen American Mexican American student. This is Ashley Medellin for English 552 on my Module 5 discussion post. Thank you.